Imagine you want to win a contract to build something just massive, like a multi-billion-dollar power plant, or maybe a desalination facility.
Right, or like a major regional transit system, a true mega project.
Exactly, a mega project. And I think most of us probably assume the pitch process just comes down to, submitting a brilliant architectural blueprint and a competitive price tag.
Yeah, it's easy to picture that, right? A boardroom where someone just unrolls this giant schematic, taps it with a pen, and says, "We build it here."
Right. You show them what it'll look like, you tell them what it costs, and you shake hands.
Right.
But today's deep dive reveals that the reality of winning one of these contracts is just, it's a completely different animal.
Oh, totally. It's incredibly complex.
Yeah. And we are looking at a document today simply titled Section G Contractor's Proposal Requirements. And this is from an invitation to tender for a project using the FEI Yellow Book standard.
Right, and for those who, might not spend their weekends parsing international construction contracts.
Which is probably most people listening.
Fair point, fair point. But the FIDO Yellow Book is basically a globally recognized standard for plant and design build projects. It's the heavy-duty framework they use when the contractor takes on the responsibility for both designing the facility and executing the physical construction.
So they're on the hook for everything.
Exactly. It shifts a massive amount of design risk away from the employer and right onto the contractor.
And Section G is essentially, it's the instruction manual for how a contractor even applies for that responsibility. So our mission for this deep dive is to extract what is basically the ultimate masterclass in project planning from this really highly technical, dense document.
It is dense, very dense.
Yeah, we're going to decode exactly what it takes to prove to a client that you can deliver a mega project safely, on time, and without descending into total chaos. And we'll do that by breaking down the 19 distinct plans a contractor has to submit just to be considered.
The sheer volume of foresight demanded here is just rigorous. The employer is asking the contractor to simulate the entire lifespan of the project on paper before a single piece of earth is even moved.
Which brings up why you, the listener, should care about this.
Yeah.
Even if you are absolutely never going to build a power plant.
Hopefully you won't have to. It's stressful.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But the methodology required in this document, the way it forces a team to anticipate risk, align like thousands of moving parts, and untangle complexity, it's a fascinating blueprint for how to operate in any high-stakes environment.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether you're managing a division, launching a startup, or even just trying to get a complicated cross-departmental initiative off the ground in your own career, the frameworks here are incredibly applicable.
They really are.
So before we even look at the contents of the submission, we have to establish the intense ground rules of how a contractor is allowed to submit their bid, because Section G is completely inflexible.
Yeah, the rules of engagement are just intensely strict. Clause G 1.1 states clearly that the proposal must be complete in all material respects.
Meaning you can't skip anything.
Right. Every single subsection from G 1.0 all the way to G 19.0 has to be addressed.
So you can't just skip a section because you assume, this doesn't apply to our specific approach.
No, absolutely not. If a contractor looks at, say, the preliminary OEM long-term service agreement section and thinks, well, we aren't using those, they can't just leave the page blank. They actually have to submit a formal written statement confirming it is not applicable. And on top of that, they have to provide a detailed technical rationale for why.
Oh, wow. So that to justify not doing it.
Exactly. It forces accountability.
Yeah.
The employer wants to know that an omission is a deliberate strategic choice, not just, an oversight.
That makes a lot of sense.
And the formatting requirements in G.1.3 enforce that transparency, too. Everything has to be in English. You need text-searchable PDFs, but you also have to hand over the editable source files.
Wait, like the actual native files?
Yep. Microsoft Word, Excel, the native scheduling software files, and the native building information modeling, or BIM files.
Oh, so they don't just want the finished glossy brochure with the charts already generated. They want the raw data so they can look under the hood, run their own analytics, and see exactly how your math works.
Precisely. They want to verify everything.
But there's a paradox here that caught my attention. According to G 1.2, every single one of these incredibly detailed documents must be clearly stamped with the words preliminary for tender.
Right, because the employer acknowledges that the contractor is basing all of this on, the limited information available during the bidding phase. You haven't done deep geotechnical surveys yet.
Right, you haven't actually dug into the dirt.
Exactly, and you haven't finalized your supply chain.
So I was thinking about this like writing a sci-fi novel about a building. Like, You are inventing the schedule, the risks, the layout. It is technically fiction at the moment of submission.
That's a great way to put it.
But I have to push back on the stakes here. If every document says preliminary on it, does it really matter if a detail is slightly off? Like, couldn't a contractor just submit an overly optimistic schedule and say, hey, we told you it was just a preliminary draft?
Well, that is exactly the trap a novice firm might fall into, and it's why the document points directly to subclause 4.1 of the Yellow Book.
Okay, what does that say?
It says these proposals are not just a marketing pitch. They legally form part of the final contract documents upon award.
Wait, really? So the fiction becomes legally binding reality the second the contract is signed?
Precisely. The preliminary tag just means we know this will require refinement as field data comes in. But the document explicitly states that these submissions must represent the contractor's genuine intent and best estimate.
Oh, so you can't just make up numbers to look good.
No, because if there is a material inconsistency between that flawless preliminary schedule you submitted to win the job and what you actually attempt to do post-award,
Let me guess. They can sue you.
basically, that discrepancy can be raised by the employer's representative as a formal contractual dispute.
Wow, so you cannot promise them an impossible timeline in the proposal and then ask for an extension on day one.
Exactly. You're locked in.
Okay, so the rules are set and the submission is legally binding. So how do you actually prove you can manipulate time and labor to get this thing built? That brings us to Section 2, predicting the future. Looking at G1.0 and G1.1, the scheduling requirements go way beyond a simple calendar.
Oh, yeah, way beyond. They require a baseline schedule using Primavera P6.
Primavera P6, that's not just like a giant Excel spreadsheet, right?
No, not at all. P6 is an industry-standard relational database software. It's designed to handle tens of thousands of interdependent tasks, and the document requires a Level 3 work breakdown structure.
Yeah, I was trying to parse what Level 3 means in this context, because if Level 1 is the entire power plant, right, and Level 2 is the individual major structures like the turbine building and the administration complex, then Level 3 means breaking it down to the specific disciplines inside those buildings. You can't just say, build turbine building 6 months.
No, they would laugh you out of the room.
Right. You have to sequence the pouring of the foundation, the curing time of the concrete, erecting the steel framework, and installing the major equipment.
And you have to show the logic links between all those Level 3 activities. You have to identify the critical path.
That's the sequence of tasks that dictates the absolute earliest the project can finish, right?
Exactly. And the employer even defines near critical paths as having a total float of 10 working days or less.
Okay, so meaning, if a single task on that near critical path gets delayed by just 2 work weeks, the entire multi-year project is officially delayed.
Yes. That creates an incredible mathematical constraint right from the start.
And they don't just want dates either. I saw they want resource-loaded histograms and S-curves showing planned cumulative man-hours.
They do.
So you have to prove you actually have the, 50 pipe fitters available during the specific week the schedule says you need them.
Which is exactly why G2.1, the organization requirement, demands the actual CVs of the proposed key personnel. They want to verify the specific human beings who will manage those pipe fitters.
But looking at all these mandatory S-curves and progress measurements, I mean, can a contractor genuinely predict total man-hours down to a smooth graphical curve before a shovel even hits the dirt? The math seems so precise for a scenario that just hasn't happened yet.
It does seem impossible, but this brings up the underlying psychology of the tender process. The employer knows the final S-curve will shift. What they are evaluating is your methodology for tracking reality.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, G1.2 demands a preliminary progress measure system. They want to know your earned value management methodology.
Earned value management. So it's like when you are managing a massive marketing campaign. You don't just want a list of tasks checked off. You need to track the exact ratio of budget burned versus actual assets delivered.
Right.
Like if you've spent 50% of the budget but only delivered 20% of the ad creatives, you are failing, even if everyone is busy.
That is the exact mechanism of earned value management applied to construction. Earned value isn't what you spent. It is the physical value of what has been built.
Okay, that makes sense.
The employer wants to see exactly how physical percent complete will be calculated and verified in the field. Because if a contractor cannot logically map out the mathematical relationship between time, labor, and physical progress now in a quiet office.
They will definitely fail to track it when the site is muddy and a huge supply chain issue hits.
Exactly. If you can't do it on paper, you can't do it in the mud.
Right. So you've built this flawless mathematical model of time and labor. But reality doesn't care about your math. Reality features severe weather, equipment failures, and human error. So how does the employer guarantee that your perfect schedule survives contact with the real world?
Well, that brings us to Section 3, the invisible machinery that keeps the project alive.
Okay, let's get into the machinery.
This is where we look at G9.0, the Preliminary Risk Management Plan. Contractors have to submit a preliminary risk register. They have to categorize threats across design, procurement, construction, health and safety, commercial, and even force majeure events.
And they can't just list the threats, right? They have to rate the probability and impact twice.
Yep, pre- and post-mitigation.
So once before their proposed mitigation actions and once after, meaning you have to prove that your specific solution actually lowers the threat level mathematically.
Right, you have to show the math of how you're making it safer.
What really surprised me, though, was the requirement for opportunity management. Like, they have to calculate upside risks.
Yes. Risk isn't always negative. Opportunity management means identifying areas where things might go better than expected and having a mechanism to capitalize on it.
Really? Like what?
Well, for example, if the earthworks team finishes excavating 3 weeks ahead of schedule, avoiding the rainy season entirely, how does the contractor adjust the subsequent schedules to pull the final delivery date forward?
Oh, wow. So you have to plan for success just as rigorously as failure.
Exactly. You can't just say, great, we're ahead. You have to know what to do at that time.
That's fascinating. And to manage all of this, the machinery gets even more complex with G10.0 interface management and G11.0 information management. The contractor has to set up a common data environment, or CDE,
Yes, the CDE is crucial.
proving their cybersecurity policies and establishing strict document naming conventions.
Because on a project with hundreds of thousands of files, a misnamed schematic isn't just a minor annoyance, it is a critical failure.
Oh, so.
Imagine a structural team is looking at revision B of a concrete slab while the mechanical team is looking at revision C. The clash on site when they actually try to build it will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix.
Just because of a file name?
Exactly.
I actually came up with an analogy to visualize how these plans interact. Think of a mega project like a human body.
Okay, I like where this is going.
So you have the heavy machinery and the builders, that is the muscle. You have the architects and the engineers, that is the brain. But you can have the strongest muscles and the smartest brain, and if the nervous system fails to send the right signals between them, the body just collapses. So the common data environment and the interface register function as the nervous system.
That is an excellent framework. Spot on. And G10.0 actually forces the contractor to mathematically quantify that nervous system.
Really? How?
The interface register isn't just a separate spreadsheet tracking who needs to talk to whom. The document mandates that the interface register must be integrated directly into the preliminary program.
Wait, so you have to map the schedule impact of an unresolved conversation.
Exactly. You have to identify external clashes. Like, let's say your team needs access to a road that's currently controlled by a third-party utility company.
Right.
If you haven't resolved how and when that handover happens, you have to show how that specific coordination delay pushes the critical path of the entire schedule back.
That is wild. You are mathematically scheduling human friction.
You really are.
That invisible digital nervous system is brilliant. But eventually, the project has to leave the server and enter the physical, messy world. A mega project involves actual communities, legal jurisdictions, and human lives, which means Section 4 shifts the focus entirely to diplomacy and ethics.
Yes, and this is where the sheer scale of the contractor's responsibility expands far beyond the perimeter fence of the construction site. Look at G3.0, the Health, Safety, and Environmental Plan.
Right, the HSE plan. And the employer doesn't just want a nice, fluffy policy statement about safety culture. They require the contractors pass 3 years of safety performance records.
They want the hard data.
Yeah, you have to submit your total recordable incident rate and your lost time injury frequency rate. You have to empirically prove your history of keeping people alive.
And then there's G5.0 procurement, which goes far beyond just sourcing cheap steel. The contractor has to detail their local content plan.
Like using local businesses.
Right. How they will utilize local labor and materials without compromising the strict quality assurance standards set in G8.0. Furthermore, they must enforce anti-bribery, anti-corruption, and ethical sourcing policies down through their entire supply chain.
So the contractor is essentially responsible for verifying the labor ethics of the factory that supplies the bolts to the company that builds the turbine.
Basically, yes, it's a massive chain of custody.
And then you hit G13.0 permitting and G14.0 stakeholder management. The contractor needs a matrix of every required regulatory approval, pinpointing who is responsible and the statutory review timelines.
It's a massive administrative burden.
And they need a community liaison plan, a strategy for managing local grievances, and a list of social impact commitments. It honestly sounds like running a small jurisdiction.
It does, and there is a very specific reason the employer delegates this to the contractor. Under a plant and design build contract, the employer wants to buy a functioning facility, not a political crisis.
Ah, they are transferring the risk of local integration to the builder.
Precisely. Because a mega project doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Right. I mean, you could have that perfect level 3 work breakdown structure in Primavera P6, but if a local community blocks the access road to protests, like dust from your convoy, your schedule is destroyed.
Exactly. A regulatory injunction because you failed to manage a culturally sensitive site, or an unaddressed local grievance that destroys the 10 days afloat on your critical path instantly.
Just gone.
Gone. The proposal has to prove the contractor understands the power structures, regulatory bodies, and community dynamics of the region before they even arrive.
So they have to map out communication workflows. They have to navigate the human terrain, not just the physical terrain.
Exactly right.
So we've seen how contractors have to manage the baseline schedule and the local community, but a mega project always pushes the limits of engineering. How does the tender evaluate a contractor's ability to handle the extremes, like extreme innovation and extreme physical danger?
That brings us to Section 5, the flex and the safety net.
Let's start with innovation. G18.0 covers value engineering. What is that exactly?
So value engineering is a formal process where contractors can propose technically sound alternatives to the employer's requirements. If the contractor has, say, proprietary technology that can build a structure faster.
Or maybe a cheaper material that meets the exact same performance specifications.
Exactly. They can submit those ideas to make their bid more attractive.
But the mechanism for submitting this is brilliantly strict. I saw that these value engineering proposals must be kept totally separate from the main bid. The document explicitly states they cannot be used to qualify the tender.
It is a critical safeguard.
Yeah, because it encourages outside-the-box thinking, but it ensures the contractor cannot use a clever innovation as an excuse to ignore the baseline requirements. Like a contractor can't say, we didn't price out the traditional concrete foundation because we think our new floating platform idea is better.
Right, they can't just ignore the assignment.
They have to submit a fully compliant bid, proving they can execute the traditional concrete foundation, and then offer the floating platform as a separate bonus option.
It quarantines the innovation. The employer needs to evaluate all the baseline bids side by side on an apples-to-apples basis. If the innovations were mixed in, the comparison would just be impossible.
That makes total sense. But the flip side of that extreme innovation is extreme danger, which is handled in G19.0. Method statements.
Yes. Method statements for any high-risk, complex, novel, or technically challenging activities.
So this covers operations like heavy marine crane lifts, complex deep excavations, working in confined spaces, or near live high-voltage systems. This connects directly back to the HSE plan we talked about.
It does.
The method statement is where the abstract schedule meets life-or-death reality.
And this section mandates that these statements include specific hold points and witness points.
Now, I was trying to picture how those work on a site. The term hold point sounds like a mandatory circuit breaker.
That's a good way to describe it.
I am imagining a scenario where you are about to pour thousands of tons of concrete over a highly complex web of steel rebar. Once the concrete is poured, you can never inspect that structural steel again. So a hold point is triggered.
That is exactly how it functions. The process legally has to freeze. The concrete trucks might be literally idling there, but no one can proceed until a specific authorized inspector arrives, witnesses the current state of the rebar, verifies it matches the engineering models in the common data environment, and officially signs off.
Wow.
Yeah, it is an immovable barrier designed to catch fatal errors before they are permanently buried.
So to win the bid, you have to identify those circuit breakers years in advance. You have to look at a blank field, consult your level 3 schedule, and say, okay, on day 412, we are executing a high-risk lift here. Here's the exact moment we will freeze the site to ensure the rigging is correct.
It is incredible, right?
The level of foresight is staggering. Honestly, looking back at the whole of Section G, winning a bid under a FIDIC Yellow Book contract means proving you have mastered time tracking, cybersecurity, community diplomacy, and extreme physical risks, all before you even win the job. You have to construct the entire project conceptually.
And you must commit to that conceptual construction legally.
Right. So for you listening, think about how this framework applies to your own world. You might not be pouring concrete or negotiating with a regulatory body,
Probably not.
but imagine adopting just a fraction of this rigor in your next major initiative. What if you identified your own operational hold points before you launched a product? Or what if you actively tracked your upside and downside risks pre- and post-mitigation instead of just hoping for the best? It is an incredibly powerful way to organize complexity.
I completely agree. And I think there is a highly practical takeaway here regarding G10.0, actually.
The interface manual.
Yeah, the requirement to create an interface register to track every friction point between different teams is something anyone can use. Think about your own workplace or even your personal life. What would happen if you mapped out an interface register for your own daily bottlenecks?
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. Would diagnosing the exact clash points between your goals and other people's priorities change the way you navigate your day?
That is a great question to leave on, because if you can map the friction, you can manage the timeline. Whether you are trying to align two departments for a software launch, or you are trying to win the contract to build a multi-billion-dollar power plant.
Exactly. The architecture of good planning remains exactly the same.
Absolutely. Well, until next time, keep mapping those clashes.
If you're interested in the templates, please visit our shop. The link is in the description.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and see next time.